Yeah, well, thanks everyone for joining our webinar. This is the fifth and final webinar of a series of 5 that we've done during the week, and really focusing on hands-on precision ag. And all week we've been hearing from farmers and consultants about really practical ways to get into precision agriculture. And it's all of those recordings are up on YouTube if you're interested, and we'll probably split them up as well so that you can hear from individual growers about their journey and what layers have been useful. I'd like to thank GRDC for sponsoring these events. They're really want to get adoption, and this is a sort of round 2 lot of workshops that we've done, and these are being run across the country. So thanks to GRDC. We've got support from FarmLink and SPAA as well, the Society for Precision Ag in Australia. So thanks for their support. Today's session with John Deere to start with, and then the other manufacturers, C&H and Trimble, is really about this final piece of the puzzle, I guess. We can do all of the data collection and analysis we like, but if it doesn't work in the machine, then the rest has really been of little value. I mean, you probably do a bit of learning, but really it comes down to deriving an action out of all this data. So that's why it's so important to have the manufacturers join us to close that loop. So I'd like to introduce, first of all, Lachlan Jarrett from John Deere, who's going to take us through really practical hands-on stuff with my John Deere and a range of other tools. So I'll let you hook in, mate, and take us through. You've probably got 45 minutes or so, and also for anyone that's on the call, absolutely throw your questions out either in the chat. There's a chat box or a Q&A tool there as well. We can answer your questions as we go, but yeah, please feel free. This has been our most sort of followed session, so there's a lot of interest in this, and please make it as interactive as you possibly can. Christian and I will be tracking the questions as we go. So thanks very much, Lachlan, for joining us, and I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Good morning, everyone, and I really appreciate the opportunity to present here today. I'm going to focus a lot on harvest. So a lot of my examples will be harvest related. I guess that's the time of the year we're at, and those same technologies are transferable when we get to tillage, planting, seeding, application, any other passes we're doing. So a brief introduction, as Tim mentioned, Lachlan Jarrett, and I'm a digital specialist with John Deere. So really I'm tasked with helping customers and dealers engage in digital tools and understanding the needs and challenges in our market. So just a quick introductory slide here. You can see that John Deere, we have 4 key tasks. So prepare, tillage, preparation steps, planting and seeding, apply, so spraying, fertilizing, whatever else we're doing there to apply, and then harvest. And really we're working towards having our cloud-based system or operations center tied in with third parties. So not only connected software providers, but agronomists, growers, and anyone else supporting on-farm operations. And then putting that information down into the machines to ensure that we get accurate work completed on the ground, and getting that increasingly automated through technology. And then just as importantly, we want the data coming back off the machines to show the work that's been done to flow back into the cloud. So we're seeing that with our telematics devices, pushing data as quickly as every 5 seconds into Operations Center, and we can see the data in near real time, so helping to make decisions on the go. So the framework that we're looking to use to enable precision ag is set up, plan, monitor, and analyze, and you'll see that in Operations Center as we go ahead. So set up, we're looking at getting the farm set up correctly. Our boundaries are, I guess, the gatekeepers for good data collection. We need good boundaries it assigns the data to the right spot, and then we can do something with it. So it's not just about collecting the data. We want to be able to understand it and use it to interrogate what's happening on the farm, whether that's making maps for prescription rates, or if it's just understanding the quality of the job that's been done. And if we saw an issue in a spray job and we've got an as applied map, potentially you could go in and understand that a certain area of the paddock was undersprayed because the speed of the machine was too fast, or oversprayed because it slowed down and there's an issue with the system. So it's just understanding what's happened and getting that spatially. We can see exactly where in the field it's happened. Plan, this is where I guess we're looking to start a bit of that automation progress. So sending jobs to the machines, getting the right information in front of the operator so that they can seamlessly connect and go. Monitor, as I mentioned before, seeing progress on the go, and then analyze. At the end of the season, how have we performed? Do we want to analyze different varieties, understand, how our varieties have performed differently in the field? So you can see there now that we're really looking to start in Ops Center, flow through to the on the ground hardware, and then be back into Ops Center at the end of the year. So the technology or the hardware that we need is our display, receiver, and connectivity, and tying that all into the Operations Center. So to get to the Operations Center, you can go operationscenter.deere.com. It's free. It's really part of the value of a John Deere machine. If you have machines that aren't John Deere, you can still upload most of your data sources in there. Still no cost, and it's a cloud-based storage system. A relatively new update is connectivity. So JD Link is now standard across all machines. Used to be a fee on that, an annual subscription, but the value of that being seen for both growers and for dealers to help support growers on the ground with connected support tools means that there's been an investment made to ensure that everyone gets that for free. So I'm going to run through some technologies now that I think add a lot of value on the ground and in the office. So the first one is Combine Remote View and Adjust. So on your mobile, you can be in the paddock in Operations Center. Go to the combine, so it's working in the field. You're seeing the progress, and you might be, obviously outside the machine. You look in the windrow behind, and there's something you're not happy with. Your losses might be higher than you'd like. So we can go into settings here, see what the current settings are, and then make an adjustment. So we might want to turn the blower speed down. As always, you typically only want to make one adjustment at a time. We're just doing 5 here for the video. And then this is the display. It pops up to say that a request has been made. And then the operator can accept that request, and it will change the settings on the go. So this is really just looking at helping less skilled operators, if multiple machines, or trying to train an operator. If you're the farm owner, farm manager, you can send those adjustments from outside the cab and have those populate. So that's Ops Center Mobile on the ground. Now we'll start in Land Manager. So this is where we're looking to manage fields, boundaries, guidance lines, flags. So we all know that good setup is key for good data, and this is where we can manage that. So it's in our setup box, and we can go to land. We've already got it populated, but I'll click on the eye, which brings up that field, and you can see that we've got the pink guidance line around the outside, the pink boundary, sorry, the blue guidance line that I've just selected. So I can see those details, and I could adjust or edit that if necessary. And the The dotted weeds patch there at the bottom of the screen, so that's a flag. You know, someone's marked in the field that there could be a problem there. We have the ability to archive from here. So if you've got multiple fields that are the same, you can archive, you can get rid of them. We can also add flags, boundaries, or tracks. As I mentioned before, our boundaries are the key for good data collection. So this is where we really want to get that setup file correct. And, you know, this is fundamental for our PA offering is work on your boundaries. The best way to do them is an RTK receiver and drive the outside. And yeah, I think this is across most tools is if we get our boundaries right, we get them accurate. All of our infield technologies like section control can work more effectively. And then we can also get better data collection. And as we get more and more automation, it becomes increasingly important.
Hey, Lachlan, can I just ask you a question on boundaries?
Yep.
Like we see continually where, you know, even just so many customers without boundaries in their machines. And I think it's changing, and Christian's probably seen more of this than me, but I guess we can't express enough how important the boundaries are. Like it sort of sets the scene for the whole journey, because, you know, like everything is done at a field level, and fields change all the time, right? And that's like our farm size has basically doubled in the last 10 years because we've lost 50% of our farmers, roughly across the board, because the farms have got bigger and people have got out. So, you know, we're dealing with a changing paddock thing all the time. I mean, I just don't think we can express enough how important that is, because everything ultimately is done at a field level, and everything in a screen is at a field level. But so often we see customers still haven't done boundaries. We've got 50 AB lines in one paddock. You know, what's your advice to those kind of customers now?
Yep. So I would get your boundary right to start with. If you've got multiples, you know, that's where we can use that land manager tool to go delete the ones that you don't need, get them out of the way. And then, you know, we can work through our guidance line to get the ones that we want. If there's, you know, two fields and you want to merge them into one, we have that capability in the land manager tool. And I'm assuming that all the other platforms have similar abilities there as well. Yeah, as you said, it's pretty fundamental for all of our precision ag offerings. So yeah, customers can do it, or, you know, there's dealership support as well to help with customers getting that set up, and huge investments being made to try and streamline that process, because that is our baseline, really, as you mentioned.
Can you hear me, Lockie?
Yeah.
Did you want to touch on the three different ways you can do the boundary? So you spoke about driving it, ideally with an RTK radio, but clipping it to existing data or hand drawing it? Yeah,
so RTK around the edge is probably our best option, where you can hook up an RTK receiver and drive the edge of the boundary and get that really accurate. Number two is as applied map. So, you know, harvest data, if you've got a whole paddock that's been harvested, you can get the operation center to put a boundary around that work data, and that's probably our second best. And we can also hand draw them, but like every tool that has the ability to hand draw, it's really only the accuracy of phone GPS, which is, you know, within 5 to 10 meters. So it's not the best option, but yeah, it's probably better than nothing. The other thing I will say about boundaries, if you have a boundary around your field, and you got an operator that accidentally forgets to change the field, when that data comes into Operations Center, it'll know where the geolocation is within that boundary, so it will populate itself there automatically. So it helps with farm management as well.
So that's even more important than to have the right boundaries in the start, because it's someone's clicked the wrong paddock, and then it fixes itself up basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you've got say 3 or 4 headers in a paddock, and each operator is given a slightly different name or farm name or whatever, or they've spelt it differently. The boundary in my John Deere acts like a funnel. So as Lachie said, even though it might have a different name, the system recognises that geographically it belongs within that boundary. So it'll put it there. Whereas if you don't have a boundary in Op Center, it'll separate all the different sets of data because the system will think, oh, it's got a different name, it belongs separately. So the boundary is crucial for not only in the cab and your guidance lines and things like that, but yeah, in Op Center as well. It saves a lot of time merging data and having to find data.
So if you join two paddocks together, would it do the same thing?
It'll merge the data as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And when you're drawing a boundary, I'm going to get down to tin tacks, but if you're drawing if you are actually in a quad bike drawing the boundary, you can offset your receiver. Is that right, to try and get to the edge, or how do you actually do that actually in the field?
Yeah, so you could say that the boundary is 2 meters to the left of the receiver, and some people will put a stick that's a broom handle or something there that runs along just inside the fence, which is setting that 2 meter distance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Just one of the comments that comes through is that the sort of the clicking there was a bit quick, so might have to, as we go, might pause through that thing and explain it a bit maybe more, Lachlan, as we go.
Yeah, no worries. Next, I'll touch on terminals. So terminals is our connected machines, and there's a lot of machines that get sold privately, and you might have sold a tractor or a harvester to your neighbour, and the terminal's still in your org, it's still connected, and that data's flowing into your org. We now have the ability to transfer those out. So you can see that I click on the machine and I can transfer, and then it brings up the pop-up. I can transfer it to an organization that's my partner, so that's someone else's org. Or if I'm not partnered with the new owner, if I know their email address, I can input the email address and it sends them a notification that I'm trying to send them the machine. Or if I don't know who's bought it, say it's sold at auction, or you don't know the person that well, you can also send it just out of your org into a holding org.
What happens with the data then, mate? Does it stay with you?
All of your your agronomic data stays in your account. So agronomic data doesn't transfer with the machine. Machine data can. There's an option if you want to send the machine data so that they can see the hours that it's done and the workloads and so forth.
So like if you're a contractor and you transferred your machine into a customer's org, it wouldn't upload the data automatically into his system. You'd still have to assign it out of your own contractor org.
If he's in your org while he's harvesting.
Yeah, so if I had a paddock of wheat and I had a contractor coming over, we assigned his terminal to my account, so it was essentially my header.
Yeah.
Would the agronomic data, then the yield data doesn't flow into my account, still flows into his own My John Deere profile, is that right?
No, it will flow into your account. If if that terminal's in your org, the data flows into your account.
Yeah, so conceivably that's what guys could do now, is that right?
Yeah, potentially. And I'll touch on assigning files and partnering with contractors, because I know that's a big issue that a lot of growers are facing. So yeah, we can put in our email address and send that one away, or put it into the holding org. The other thing we've got the ability to do now is request. So you've bought a machine privately and you want the data to flow into your org. And in the past, there's been some challenges with getting that. Now we have the ability to go to the top, add new equipment, and then we put in the equipment name and the serial number, which you will be able to get off the machine. And you can search for the org, or you can just add it separately. So yeah, if you've bought a new combine for the start of harvest, here we put in our serial number, which it'll start with a 1 for a John Deere. And when you get the serial number, it will search the John Deere system for that serial number and then try and transfer it to your account. So now here we get to the contractor. So go to setup and team, add to your team in the top right, and add a partner. This is where contractors, we want to add them as partners, and then you can limit what they can see in your org, but it allows them to transfer the data that they're collecting in their machine into your org. So grant access, put in their email address, send that through, and it will, here's our ability to set their access. And you can also set if you just want them in certain fields. And then that's our ability to get contractor partners to transfer us information from our own machines. So, you know, once they're a partner, they can go into files and assign those files to you if that's the way you want to do it. So we've got a new tool here now, Work Planner. And I talked earlier about automating our functions. And sorry, I can't pause this video because it's actually, I made it into a GIF so that it would play a little better. But we put in that we want to do our harvest. We can select our machines and send out what we want the machine to do. So I've got a combine. I select my header or front. I can add an operator. So if you know you've got a certain operator that's going to be driving the combine, you can put that in. You don't necessarily have to. Add a work order. So if this was a contractor and they had a number for that farm, they could put it in or add in some instructions. So if I'm adding my fields here, but if I cross the field boundary, so another important reason to have a boundary, if I drive across that boundary, the Gen 4 display will pop up and say that you have work in this field that you need to complete. And as you can see here, I can pick what guidance line I want for that field, and it will control that. And then from here, I can edit again or send to equipment. So you can see I've already selected that machine, it's connected, and that's going to send the job to that machine, and it's going to put a backup copy into my files page. Yeah, so as I mentioned, this is important for getting the right setup data to the right machine to do the job. And we can also do this from the mobile. So I select harvest, plan, and then same process. So if I've got, if it's easier to do it from your mobile, you can do it in here and send the same data out to the machine. So if you start to consider where this looks to in the future, as we start to get more automation of machines, we're getting the information about what job we want the machine to do and where we want it to do it, what guidance line we need it to use, what variety, what rate, send it through. And if I want to, I can go in and get my farm map up. And as I touch on the fields on the map, you can see that I'm selecting them. So add work, and there's my 5 fields with barley in them, where I can edit, and I can also get directions to the field. So like everything in the app, if you hit that directions button, it gives you a Google Maps direction to get to the machine in the field. I know this is going pretty quickly. We've got a lot of things we're trying to get through, and the videos are pretty quick. But yeah, I guess the premise here is setting it up, getting our data set up correct at the start, and then these other tools will flow through. So I've just covered what I would say are the pre-harvest tools that we need to get right. So boundaries, guidance lines, the right machines in your org, using our new free connectivity service, sending the work to the machine. And now with Analyze, I've got the job done. And what does that look like? So in Ops Center here, that's my farm. I go Analyze and then Analyze up the top. So I can select harvest 2020 and wheat, and it will bring up all my wheat harvest for the year by field. And I can see my average yields, average moisture, and we can do this for all 4 types of passes. So every year that you've got data for, and you'll see that if I pause this now, cottage was my 5.9 tonne to the hectare with an average moisture of 8.6. So I can see all this data about how each field's performed. I look there and say, okay, Pines, it was 140 hectares, so it was actually my biggest field, but it was my worst performing at 3.2 tonnes to the hectare. Why? We can start to interrogate what the issues could have been. As the grower, you know what's happening on the ground. So was that a new field that you've recently brought into production? Has it got a lighter soil type that doesn't yield as well? Does it have waterlogging issues? Start to really think about what's happening in that field. And from here, I can then go at the top. Up here at the top, I could also go varieties. And if I've planted 4 varieties of wheat for the year, it would bring up my average yield per variety. So if you're trying to interrogate what variety has worked the best for your operation, and a plan for next year potentially, how much seed am I going to hold of each variety for next year, we can see their relative performance. And from here, I can click straight through to the map page, which will take me through the Field Analyzer Beta, it's called, which is our harvest layer. We also have Analyze on mobile. So bottom right-hand corner, I can go down and select wheat harvest, and I get that same information here. Kitty Hawk, there's my variety for that field. I can swipe across, see when it was harvested and my total weights. And now it's populating my yield map for that field. So we can really interrogate what's happening in that field. I mentioned before, you click on the map and it goes to Field Analyzer Beta. Here we are. So I'm in Analyze. I click on that map page. There's a bit of required loading time. And here is my harvest layer. So I can zoom in, and as you can see, there's an old dam and a tree stump. There's a bit of a mess around that, so it's impacting the way that my field's being farmed. It's taken away the ability to drive straight rows, and we've got a yield impact, obviously, because we haven't got the ability to plant there. What decision can I make on my farm to try and streamline that? Is it worth pushing out a tree there, or filling in a dam, or do we need to farm this slightly differently? What are our options to try and make this paddock more efficient? If I go to down the bottom here, you can see my work totals. So again, area, average yield, total yield, moisture. And then I can add in other operations underneath. So I want to check out the impact of speed on my harvest. So did my harvesting speed impact the yield performance I got? And yeah, I guess interrogate that. If it did, does that mean we need to make an adjustment next year? Is that operator training? Is that slowing down? You know, we want to get the most out of our machines, but we don't want to leave any crop in the paddock. So here's a screenshot of what that looks like. So at lower speed, what was our yield? And at higher speed, obviously there's going to be a relationship there, because the machine, if it's working towards capacity, it's got to slow down as the yields get heavier. But we can see sometimes where a relationship between speed ends up with a lot lower yield. We can also do elevation. So on this page, you can see an elevation map on the left and a yield map on the right. While it's hard to understand in this map exactly what the impact of elevation is on most of the field, you can see that there's a band on the left-hand side of the gully running through the middle that's poorly performing. And that's also got the blue coloring for low elevation on this field. Is there a relationship there? And that's where on-farm knowledge is so important. Do we have a drainage issue, or what could be happening here? With elevation data, it's important to remember any machine that changes weight during the operation isn't going to collect accurate elevation data. So we need RTK, but a sprayer or a combine are losing or gaining weight through the field. So the receiver shifts slightly in its position in terms of elevation itself, and that throws out our data. If you were doing a tillage or seeding pass, your tractor doesn't actually change in height, so we can get good accurate elevation data and understand, I guess, where our field issues could be. Back here in an interactive video, we have this ability to do a subfield analysis. So I can draw a square around any part of the field and try and understand what my performance is like. So if you're doing any on-farm trials, you can select those, and it brings up down here selected zone versus whole field performance. So average yield, total yield, speed, elevation, the whole lot. And this is where, you know, we can try and understand what's happening. So there might be an area that performed really well, and you want to pull that out, whether that's a different soil type. And you know that, and you just want to see how it performed differently. If you've done a trial, you might have a nutrient-rich strip that you put through to try and understand how you can manipulate your fertilizer rate to get better performance. There's a lot of options here, but this just gives us that ability to understand what's happening in that little zone versus the rest of the field.
Can you analyze at a zone level, mate, as well? Like, so you can say you did a prescription map across that and then analyzed the average yield per zone?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, we're sort of getting into something a little more complicated, because you've got to be able to select that on the operation. But if that prescription came in correctly, we should be able to.
Yep. You're going to cover off on multiple headers in the field as well, or multiple combines, I mean?
Yeah, I guess, what do you want to
well, we
cover?
Saw one of the growers this week showed a beautiful example of, yeah, 3 different machines, and one, what was it, Christian? Two were yielding on average 2.5 tonnes per hectare. No, 3.5 tonnes per hectare, and one was 2.5 tonnes per hectare, wasn't it?
Yeah, they had 3, 2 of his own and a neighbour, and yeah, the difference was a bit over a tonne per hectare in average yield between the top 2 and the bottom one, which was obviously out. So it caused, as you would imagine, a fair bit of striping within the yield map.
Yeah.
So we mentioned the ability to be able to change that, adjust that header that was out or not calibrated properly. But do you want to touch on the importance of calibration and things like that?
Yeah, so I'll start on calibration. We've got to calibrate, to do our yield calibrations first. John Deere has active yield in combines, which is a self-calibrating system to try and remove some of those issues. And then we have post-calibration ability as well in these tools. So sometimes our data's out in total yield, and your weighbridge docket says that you got 100 tonne for the field, but your combines came up with 98. You can input that 100 tonne figure and it redoes the data, but it still keeps that even consistency. I guess that's what we're wanting, is consistency across the field, so we understand where our variability is. In terms of multiple machines in a field, I know that's a challenge. If you had, in your example with 3 combines in the field, if there were 3 John Deere combines, we have the ability to adjust them so that we sort of post-calibrate the one that was out and remove that striping. And if we know that it was inaccurate data coming off that machine, we can fix that at the end.
I'm getting a bit technical, but does it also consider like the lows and the highs parts of the field, because the flow rate changes, and just a ton shift, like a simple shift doesn't really work. So does it take it sort of to the next level a bit, where your actual flow rates at high and low parts of the field are also considered
with the post-cal?
Yeah.
So it really leaves the data points where they are.
Yep.
And just adjusts what the total is evenly across those data points. So,
okay. Yep.
Or proportionally based on what value they add. So
yep.
if it was 1 tonne and you had to increase by 10%, it goes to 1.1. And if it's 2, it goes to 2.2.
Yep.
So the whole farm gets the distribution based on how it performed.
Yep. Cool. It does highlight, like a lot of people say, oh, I'm only interested in the differences, like I'm not really care about the actual tonnages. But I think whilst that's somewhat true, you still don't get you still don't get like the difference between highs and lows can also be different. So it's just not an even thing across the field. So the lack of calibration doesn't just necessarily relate to the tons of grain. It also relates to what those differences are. So I don't think people understand that. So you might say, oh, well, all I want to know is if there's a 3 tonne difference across the paddock, but in fact, the highs and lows are also wrong. So it is really important to get it calibrated. I mean, most of the time you see an error, either whether they're not calibrating or whether they put the wrong crop type in, and it brought up a different calibration curve, which is equally as bad because each crop has its own calibration curve. They behave differently in the machine. So you can't just apply the same. Yeah, it's the same thing across all paddocks. I mean, didn't we have a grower on Monday, Christian? He said, oh, everything he's ever harvested is sorghum, which is like, oh my goodness, that's not going to be good, because now we can't, wheat flow is going to be different sorghum flow. So you can't now look at those maps. So it is absolutely fundamental to get that calibration right, and to also get the crop type right, because the behavior is different.
Now, nutrient removal map is going to be different for our crop type, and thinking back a few years, you might not remember that you harvested barley as sorghum.
Yep.
And that nutrient removal is
different.
Going to be different. Yeah.
I think we're getting there now, but certainly in the early days, a lot of people, it was just the last thing that people did, which is understandable because harvest is a busy time. But I think I am seeing a shift that people are really valuing the data now, and really want to collect good quality, clean yield data to actually make those better decisions on. So,
yeah. And if there's any issues there, a lot of the dealerships have now got dedicated precision ag teams that you can call that can help you through those processes.
That's
as a grower, you're definitely not alone. People are there to help and just reach out, and we want to get this data accurate so that we can start moving forward with it. One other thing I just wanted to touch on from here is creating a report. So as a contractor, you could create this just a basic PDF report that you could send to a grower alongside their data, but it just gives them an overview of what's happened in the field. Or if you're a grower and you want to show your agronomist what's happened, you could just create this report and send it to them via email or text message, and help them or get their input on what's happening on the farm. So we go to export at the top. And then it just creates a PDF at the bottom, which I can open. So it just gives a basic summary of what's happened on the field. There's not a whole lot of information here, but if you're just trying to send that to a grower, to an agronomist, to someone helping you, we have that ability, and we can do it quickly and easily.
Can you do a batch, mate? Like do your 100 paddocks at once?
No, we can't at the moment.
Just one paddock at a time, yeah.
Back in the Analyze tool, we could pull down all the paddocks in a Excel spreadsheet side by side, but we don't get the map.
Yep. A question that's just come through: is there any cleanup of yield data due to duplicate header travel overlaps, or travel paths or overlaps? How do you handle that?
So I'm assuming that this is referring to two headers in a field, and one cuts out and the next one's got half their front empty.
Yep. Yeah. How does that work?
Yeah. So the system should know that where machine 2 cut, half of his front will be empty. So it won't register any yield in that area.
And what's that called again? Is that what?
Section control.
Yeah, on the machine, so there is a section control on a header, basically.
Effectively, that's the same rationale, that it understands that area is cut. So if it was to come back over, it's not going to get any more off the second time.
Yep. Cool. Thank you.
Lockie, do those headers need map sharing for that ability?
They shouldn't do, but we do have that ability, as you mentioned, to do. It's called Infield data sharing, is the John Deere terminology for it. So if you had 2 sprayers, 2 tractors at seeding time, 2 headers or more, up to 6, you could do infield data sharing. So they share guidance lines, and you can see painted on your map where the other machines have been as well. So that one's pretty popular with sprayers. There's 2 sprayers in a field. You definitely don't want to do a double up. So they share their coverage map, and then section control turns off if you go over the coverage map of the other machine.
And does that work? Does it need sort of mobile coverage for that, or does it work machine to machine comms?
That one's mobile coverage.
Yep. Okay. Which is a bit of a limitation, but I mean, hopefully it's getting better out there, or better, at least better boosters and things. We can actually do that. But yeah.
The next, and the reason I've got these split out, you can see the files here, and each page that I've had has a name at the top. That's the name of the tool that we're using in Operations Center. I probably should have clarified that a little bit earlier, but better late than never. Files is where we can go and send a prescription map to the machine if you want. So we could do that in Work Planner, or we can do it in Files. So I'll start at the home page, go More, and then click on the Files tab. And you'll see at the top, I've got Moline Cottage Water. So that's the naming convention I've given it. It's a prescription map, and I want to send that to my sprayer. So I can click on it, and it will bring up just the general information. And because this is just one field, it's simple. But if I had created a batch of prescription maps that I wanted to upload, if I clicked on content, it would tell me each field that I've got a map for in this file. Then I just click it. I can download where my mouse is now. So that works if I wanted to download it onto a USB and then plug the USB into the display to upload it. That's a a methodology there, or we can go, and that's through the desktop or data manager. Or I can go up the top. I'll just come back a little bit. So you can see transfer to equipment at the top. That will select the file I'm on, transfer to equipment, and then I find my sprayer. So 616R, that's the John Deere 6,000 litre tank. It's connected. It just queues, as you can see at the top, and then as it's completing, it changed to file transferred. So that will sit on the display, able to be selected for that field. So Tim mentioned to me that that's a topic that came up a few times this week, is transferring files to machines, and that's a way that we can do it in this system.
So that Marlene Cottage water is a zip shape file. Is that what that is underneath that?
A zip file, yeah. Yep.
It's just a zip shape file though. So you can send, it's already zipped up, because, you know, like coming out of our platform is just a zip shape file. And then you can just push that to machine. Does it unzip on the machine then, or is it? How does that work?
The machine can handle the zip file.
Okay. Yep. And therefore it just sits on the machine as a prescription. Yep.
Yeah.
If anyone's got any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or the QA as well, anytime.
Yeah. I mentioned I went through Work Planner before. We have that same ability to attach the prescription map to the job we're sending to the sprayer. This is files is where all of our, I guess, primary data sources sit. So as you're looking through, you can see different machines and the jobs they've done, and it tells you that the file type. So all that is documentation data except for the top one. So whether that's spray data, tractor data, which could be tillage, seeding, or harvest data. On the left, we have the ability to select a date range, client, farm, field. So if you knew that it was in field 13 West, say, you could just search for that field and it would bring up all the data in that date range for that field. So we just went through. And I just want to touch on the My Transfer app, which is another way that we can transfer data to and from our machines. So it's on your phone. It's a free app. I can transfer to Operations Center. So I go continue, and then I expand drives. So I expand drives are USB on one side, and then they're a iPhone connector on the other. So I can pull it off on the from my display on a USB. I plug it into the phone and I can send it through. So that's really good for if you don't have a connected machine, or if in your field you don't have good coverage, and you want to go home and do it that afternoon when you get back at the shed. This second way, to display. So this is if I'm in Operations Center and I want to get data to my display. I can go in and it's a Gen 4 display. I can bring it in through USB, or I can go browse Operations Center files. Here I log into my Operations Center account and it brings me to that files page and lets me select the ones I want. The other thing to mention about My Transfer, John Deere takes all sorts of data types, Case, New Holland, Trimble, Topcon. There's a wide variety that are compatible. If you want to bring in, say, a Case harvest data layer, use this app as a really simple way to do it. So get a SanDisk iExpand, download the data, plug it in, and it will automatically load. And that yield layer, say for a harvester, will populate just like a John Deere yield layer. So it's not like we're only getting John Deere data in here. So I know a lot of our growers have got mixed fleets, and that's the ability that we have now. And I'll touch on our Equipment Plus app. This is just a helpful tool if you ever need a bit of help in the paddock. So I've got precision ag. Yeah, what do I need help with? I want to have a look at my display. So it will help me set up my display here on the screen, or I can go in my harvester and then crop settings, and it will help me set up my combine with the crop settings I need. I can add new machines, whatever you need. So sprayers, combines, seeders, whatever you're doing, this can help you set up. So combine setup, if you were to tell it you had barley, it would give you some indicative settings to start with, and then you can try and improve from there. So here we're just inputting our information about the baler, and there we go. Next, I'll just show you some tools. So you can see at the bottom right, instructions, it tells us what we've got. We have a grain loss calculator here. So I put in my header settings, and it will, I get my measurement. It tells me what my loss is. If I think that that's acceptable, not acceptable, I can change. So if my losses aren't acceptable, I have this ability to go through a quick work through here. So Equipment Plus app, again, it's free. Download it on your phone, and it's yeah, it's really a helpful tool to help you get going in field. Next, third-party integration. So I mentioned that we have data coming in from a number of sources. We can also plug in a lot of other tools who can help you, whether you want prescription maps, elevation files, any of the others. So there's hundreds of companies now that are integrating, and so they can, depending on their agreements, they can push and pull data in and out for customers. Here's just 6 that a lot of growers might see in Australia. So Terracotta, PCT, AgWorld, Agri and Prescription Creator, Drone Deploy, and Centera. So they've connected, and for instance, you could send, or AgWorld could pull your John Deere boundaries into their platform, and then have the same boundaries for the recommendations they're doing for growers on the ground as what you're using in your machines. Hopefully keep that accuracy. Terracotta could pull out your elevation data we talked about earlier, understand it, and then they could push that back through back in as a map for land leveling. And then Data Connect. So this is an agreement that so far John Deere Class, Case New Holland, and 365 FarmNet have come to, where the cloud-based technologies of all of the companies are communicating and cooperating, I guess, to a certain extent, so that we can see each other's machines in each platform.
Quick question, mate. A little bit off track, but does John Deere allow third-party IoT type devices, so Internet of Things devices, to monitor heat of machines and prevent harvest fires, or what's John Deere doing in that space? Because there's been a fair bit of talk about that recently, I see.
So it's a pretty difficult question to answer. They would be able to tie in through that API process or third-party integration process, because that's open to everyone. That, you know, it's a standardized language, so to speak, that you can tie in. But I can't really make comment on devices attached to machines, just because of without knowing the total context. You know, with any modification can impact warranty and those sort of implications.
Exactly. Yep.
And I think we're just about out of time here, so I just want to touch on one last thing. You've got what it takes. There's a screenshot of the website. It's I guess a dedicated website for John Deere Precision Ag. All the content's made locally. Myself and 2 others have made a lot of this content. It's regularly updated, and it's got a whole heap of information around learning more. So some examples of customers that are using data and how they're using it. Getting started, so setting up my account, display, transferring data, viewing data. So a lot of these tools that I've run through today, there's more how-to videos of them on this website. Help me improve. And get ready to harvest, which went live on Wednesday, I believe. So those videos were created in the last month with some how-tos and information about what we're doing for harvest. Anyone that wants to have a look, there's a QR code. If you've got that on your screen, scan it with your phone, and that will take you to that website. Yeah, that's all we've really got time for today. I just want to thank Tim and Christian again for inviting us along, and everyone for joining the session. It's great to be able to talk to growers directly like this, and I guess we might have time for a couple of questions if anyone's got them before we finish up.
Yeah, feel free to type them into the Q&A box, but really appreciate your time, Lachlan. That some really good, clear messages there. There's massive capability now in the system, so it's great to see that coming to fruition. Yeah, so appreciate that. I'll just stop recording. If there's any more questions, keep firing them through, but I'll just stop this bit of recording so I can separate all three bits out. Hold on.